Well, I haven't done a rock to point in a while, and I did get a suggestion to do one. Let me plug in the phone here. I'm filming with the phone, so let me plug it in so I don't lose the charge. I have a feeling this might go for an hour and a half to 2 hours. If I'm careful, it takes a while to do the rock to points. Yeah. I've got 3 stones I can use right now. This one, oddly enough, has a suggestion on it. Maybe rock to point. This one was given to me by Gear Gnasher. That's his YouTube handle, I think. Yeah, Gear Gnasher. This one I was gifted in Texas at a Knapping. This is regular road rock from near San Angelo, Texas. And I think this is Fort Payne. And I'm not sure who gave this to me. I think maybe Aaron Estes gave this one to me. Okay, so we got 3 to choose from in case any of those goes badly. I've got backups. Okay. So I'm going to be using modern tools. I'll do the rock to points with natural tools on Fridays during live streams. This is just going to be a regular video, long format. I haven't done one of these in a while. Yeah, YouTube doesn't really promote these anymore as much as they used to. But I do need to do these from time to time, because people request these. All right, so look at that. That's nice and waxy. This might actually work well. Let me turn the fan on. Hope that's okay. The shop temperature still hasn't cooled down enough. It's still in the 80s in the shop. But the sun is starting to go down, so we should be okay. The phone probably will not overheat. Okay. So yeah, this is going to be an instructional video. You can see the angle. I think this is about a 45. It's a pretty good angle to strike on, as long as it's nice and dull and no sharp, delicate edges. See, if you hit a sharp, delicate edge by mistake, you can hit an edge that's at a 45 with a delicate point on it, but if you miss and you end up crushing a lot of that stuff, and you might not be able to clear it all off for the next strike. It affects the next strike badly sometimes. Let's see. Yeah, if you got too much of a crushed edge, this one's got a little bit, which is to be expected with any tool. But if it's crushed a lot, you'll have to spend extra time removing all the crush areas. That's all. Oh yeah, I need my glasses. Let's see. I cleaned up the shop today. Put my stuff in different places. Let me see. Now that I'm doing a rock to points, let's weigh this to see what I start out with. I can't see it. All right, so that's the weight of the bowl. The weight of the plastic bowl did not show, so it's already calibrated to take into account the weight of the plastic bowl. So what we got here, all of these flakes and debitage so far adds up to 1 pound 5.1 ounces. 1 pound 5.1 ounces. Let's see. What did I do with my notepad? One pound, 5.1 ounces. Start. Okay. So that's what we got so far. I'm going to weigh it when we're done to see what the ratio is on the yield that we get. Or the percentage of yield, I should say. Not the ratio, but the percentage of yield. Okay, so I'm going to try for 1 point out of this. I'm trying to maximize it. This is from Texas. I don't know if I said that. I said it was from Gear Nasher, but I don't know if I said this was from Texas. It looks pretty good. It's got a little bit of a reddish tone to it. Kind of like root beer, but it's not as translucent, I don't think. Well, it is kind of translucent, isn't it? Root beer chert is a little more red than this. And many times it has more cortex than this. Now this, he had a question on this part right here. Does that look like it was ruined by heat right here? Yeah, it's very possible that this could be exposed to heat on this side, which means the whole thing was exposed to some heat, you know, in a natural fire, grass fire or whatever. So we had to remove the crackly area there. But I don't know. I'm not an expert at knowing if it's fire damaged or what. It napped easy right there. So maybe it was a little bit heat treated. Maybe. It's good quality stone. And who knows, maybe the natural fire made it better. That's always possible. It could also have been heated by Native Americans. There's probably a slight possibility for that. I don't know. So it could be a heat treat. It's napping like it's high grade. So it's either high grade raw or heat treat, yeah. Most likely high grade raw. Yeah, and I don't know if Gear Nasher heat treated this or not. Usually when someone sends me something that's heat treated, they'll write the temperature of the heat treat on the side. Usually. So I know. Yeah, if you send me some heat treat, yeah, do me a little bit of a favor and write the amount of heat you used so we can all share the knowledge. There's a bit of concrete right there. The more we remove of that, the better. That seems to be the only area with concrete, which is good. And the edges are opportunistic. I don't prepare them at a certain angle. I just, if I can get away with it, I'll hit. Well, I'll hit and see if I can get away with it. And if it doesn't work, I, grind it a little bit more, or, chip it a little more to get the edge stronger. But it's never the same. At this stage, it's not the same. When it starts getting thinner, that's when I'm getting that's when I get more picky, and it seems to be about the same. I try to keep the edge quality about the same and not so chaotic. But I don't do it at this stage because I want to get this over with fast. And if there's slight mistakes, it's okay because I've got meat in it that can be used to correct any mistakes. When it gets thinner, it's more difficult to correct mistakes. It's getting more and more difficult as it goes to correct any mistakes. The amount of force changes also by a lot, depending on the size of the flakes I need. And also depends on where on the piece I'm hitting it. When I'm hitting it near the tip, I'm always very cautious. And use a minimum amount of force up here, which sometimes leads to flakes that don't go far enough, but I'd rather have them not go far enough than break the tip off. I can fix the short flake thing later. The short flake thing usually results in a thick biface. That's still not too bad, right? I'll use the indirect percussion to thin it down. It's not bad to start with a thick biface when you're switching to indirect percussion. Some guys who use the bopper or the direct percussion all the way up until they switch to pressure flaking. I don't knap that way typically. Sometimes I do, depending on the quality of the material. If it's very cooperative, sometimes I extend the time that I'm spending on direct percussion. But eventually I switch over to indirect percussion when I'm trying to push the limits of how thin I can get it. If I push the limits with direct percussion, I end up breaking them a lot. Because of the accuracy, or I should say because of the inaccuracy. I'm not as accurate with direct percussion. If you're accurate with direct percussion, then go for it. And yeah, sometimes it has to do with how well you prepare the edges. But it doesn't matter how well you prepare the edges if you're not going to hit them accurately. So I think I put accuracy first and then preparation of the edge second. But it's a very close first and second. I'm not sure which is more important in some cases. Sometimes you can prepare the edge really well and it doesn't matter too much how you hit it. It's not going to mess it up unless you make a big mistake in hitting it. You can isolate spots on the edge as an example. And it's kind of a no-brainer when you isolate spots. Just got to make sure you don't mess up the strike because you only get one strike. And I tend to abrade a lot across the whole edge. That way if I have a failure at point A, I can switch to point B. I don't individually select spots to isolate. I just let the natural incidental things occur while I'm abrading. Sometimes I'll use the abrader to sculpt the edge a little bit, but it's not like it's precision sculpting of the edge. If I want precision sculpting of the edge, I'll use a pressure flaker or an indirect percussion flaker. What are the angles when I'm doing this? They're always different, slightly different. The default position for these types of strikes is the same pretty much as in indirect percussion. The bopper in line, you know, the center line of the bopper, the way I do it, and this might not apply to everybody. The center line of the bopper is in line with the center line of the piece most of the time. Doesn't matter where it is. That's the default position, you know, also perpendicular to the center line this way. Just like indirect percussion. That's the default position. You start from there. That's your baseline for everything. So if you're hitting, you know, if you're new, start with that. And if this is rounded, it'll automatically impart some inward force as well, because you're not hitting like this because it doesn't do much. You're hitting up on the surface a little bit, and it's kind of scraping down. And since it's rounded, it exerts inward pressure. So when you're brand new, just start in this direction. You can alter this angle if you want to make the flakes go this way or that way or straight in. But you'll have to try to follow ridges when you're new. That way the flakes are a little bit more predictable. But as you gain experience, you don't need to follow ridges. As long as you have a fat spot, it'll work. And maybe just a little bit of a ridge, but you know, it depends on the size of flakes too. The longer flakes need more ridge support, yeah. The short flakes you can hit just about anywhere, you know, if you trim downward. And people hold the tools and the workpiece in this orientation because that's ergonomic. But if you want to go back to the baseline, you would strike like this. If I wanted to remove this flake here, baseline is like this, maybe like this, but ergonomic is like this. But yeah, you can hit with the baseline type of setup. It's just not as ergonomic, and when it's not as ergonomic, your accuracy can suffer. But it still removes flakes when you're at that baseline. And then you can angle this inward so that you're actually aiming toward the center of the point, or at least not away from the piece. If you want your flakes to go inward like this, if you want them to go across that way, then yeah, snap like this to hit. But just remember, the baseline is right here, and then from there you can adjust it, but you don't adjust it downward very much. Maybe 5 to 10 degrees at the most, but you can adjust this angle a lot. Okay, short flakes like this, when you're like that, that's the medium-sized flakes, and then when you're slightly aggressive that way, that's where the longer flakes come in. Okay, so you wouldn't want to go more than a 45 this way. Okay, you can experiment and vary. I don't want myself, I don't want to be too aggressive with it. I will modify it according to the type of stone. If it's a real tough stone, then I'm really very aggressive with it. If it's not too tough, I back off and I'm almost at baseline. And I'll adjust this to get my baseline. I won't adjust this too much. I like to keep this the same every time. So it's one less thing to think about. So I adjust this. That's why I don't use a pad, because it doesn't give me much adjustment room. Okay? One of the reasons why I don't use a pad. And I'm just trying to take off a little flake there. Didn't work on that direction, so I flipped it over. And right now this edge, even though it's wavy, it's pretty much on the center line. I'll hit below center line when I can, but it doesn't always mean you have to. Just because you see a low spot doesn't mean that's a good place to hit. You got to make sure that it's strong enough for what you want, for one. There are other reasons why you might not want to hit the low spot. If it's a material that overshoots easily or snaps in half easily, sometimes hitting the low spot can increase the snap in halfishness or the overshots. Mainly the overshots. You don't, well, some people don't mind them, but I don't like them. So I don't like the overshots, so I stay away from really, really low areas on the edge. The flakes like convexity, right? So if you're too, your flakes will curve. So if this is too low, it'll curve into the piece too much. If it's backed off a little bit, it'll curve over the top of the piece. It won't dive in as much. So you just stay a little bit below, you hit a little bit below center line is the best. Or you can use exact center line for hitting, and then you can flip it both ways like that and nap from both sides equally well. But you just get dialed in and you figure out what's working. It doesn't always have to be formulaic. You might have to follow a certain formula or a certain setup every single time if you're new. But as you gain experience, you don't think about it, and also you don't need to follow the same rules every time. You can try out different techniques, for example. Like if I want to, if I don't feel like there's enough support, I can hit it like this, so there is support here, and then hit it, but that's usually with tougher rocks. I can usually get a snappy enough hit freehand like this without having to resort to backing it up against my leg and then strike it. You know what I mean? This is napping well. Same with Obsidian. You don't need much backing up against something when you hit it unless it's a big piece. But even when it's a big piece, the way I nap, I don't usually back it up against anything. I just let the mass of the workpiece resist the strike. The faster I strike, the more resistance to the strike, and I use the mass of the workpiece against itself. I'm being very careful right now because normally I'd switch over to indirect percussion at this stage, and I'm seeing how far I can go with the bopper, but I've got to be very careful because I'm not that accurate with it. So, yeah, I miss a lot, and that's because I just want to hit the very tip of the spot that I'm looking at, or hit it right on the very edge, so I'm only making contact with a small area. It helps to prevent a lot of pulling, because this can break the piece in half if you hit it really hard from the base like this. So I'm just going to try to barely tap it. Yeah, like that. Doesn't take much if you have good material to get a nice thinning flake from the base. If it's difficult material and you have to hit very hard, that's when you start running into problems when you strike from the base. Okay, so that stage is over pretty much. Let's see, I need to collect these flakes in the bowl. As we go. There's some that we won't be able to catch because they're spread out. We'll catch most of them. We just need an estimate anyway. It doesn't need to be precise. What I'm going to do is I'll compare the weight at the end to what we started with to what we end up with. And yeah, we can use some of these, or they used to use some of these in the past as tools, but I want to compare the finished point to the initial weight of the rock for this rock to point demonstration. Yeah, when I finish, I'll pick up all the little bitty debitage too. But for now, we'll just clean up most of it. All right. So this is like the beginning of the third stage. The first stage is skinning off all the bad areas from the rock and then start making a thick biface. And then comes the next stage where you start thinning it down. Okay? So I started to thin it down, and I just use only direct percussion. So that's preliminary thinning with direct percussion. Now my secondary thinning or final thinning is going to be with indirect percussion. It's a different technique, different mindset. There's also different mindsets between the different stages. Like the first stage, when you skin the rock and get rid of all the, as much as you can, all the defects in the concrete and all the cracks and stuff, until you get a biface. That's the first stage, and that's a different mindset than the process of starting to thin it. Now, since it's fairly thin, this next stage is even harder, and I think this is the hardest stage of flint knapping, because as it gets thinner, the chance of breaking this increases exponentially. And not only breaking it in half, but breaking the edge up where you don't want to lose a lot of width. Okay? If you want to keep it wide, it gets harder as it gets thinner because the tools will, they will take their toll on a thin edge. Yeah, whereas if it's thicker, it doesn't do much as far as removing width that you don't want to remove. Okay, so this next stage, I usually take a little pause because it's a different mindset to thin down a thin piece. Thinning down a thin piece is the hardest part in all of flint knapping. I guess with notching being the close second, I guess. All right, so this helps me to be more successful when I use indirect percussion because it's more accurate. And accuracy is very important. Yeah, okay. I'm going to sharpen those, or I'm going to remove the pitted areas. I was doing a little bit of knapping earlier today, so these got beat up. So let me sharpen these, or not sharpen, but grind them down smooth. Alright, so let's see. I'm using two sizes. 3/8 and 5/16 on the indirect percussion flakers, which are just copper rods, solid copper. And these are not grounding rods because grounding rods usually have a steel center with copper plating on the outside only. These are solid copper, and yes, they will bend because they're soft compared to steel. All right, so 3/8 and 5/16 diameters. I do have two of the 5/16, but I only sharpened up one, or I only smoothed one of them. But if I need to, I'll smooth this one as well. This one's not too bad. I didn't use it earlier. I also have another, I think it's 3/8, yeah, 3/8 with a little spatula on the end for indirect notching, indirect percussion notching. I might use that. Now I brought the scale out so I can weigh the boppers I was using. Just want to make sure I get the exact weights. 13.4 ounces, 8.1 ounces. Okay, so 13.5 and 8 ounce boppers. That's what I used in the beginning. Okay. I didn't take a measurement on the overall stone, did I? I forgot that part. I forgot to take a measurement on the overall stone in the beginning. Yeah. Anyways, this is right now is 3.5. So before I begin the hardest part of flint knapping, it's a 3.5 by 2 inch biface. And if it starts to look like something as I'm thinning it down, it'll become a preform. If it starts looking like the finished piece, that's a preform. You know, there's a rule where, you know, all preforms are bifaces, but not all bifaces are preforms. Okay? I shouldn't say all. Sometimes there's original flake scar, and back in the day, some of the artifacts have one smooth side from the original big spall or flake, and it's napped with these other smaller flakes on the other side. That's a unifacial piece. Okay? But, you know, preforms on a unifacial piece start to look like the finished point. Once it starts looking like the finished point, that's called a preform. Whether it's got one original surface and one napped surface, or if it's got two napped surfaces. Okay? Now when I do indirect percussion, I tend to abrade these edges more because I'm applying force in a much smaller area, and when you do that, the stone has a tendency to crush more when you concentrate the force. Now, some guys don't experience that crushing when they sharpen their tools or when they use a smaller tool tip. They don't get more crushing, and they don't need to abrade more. Okay, so it's not a hard and fast rule, but the way I do it, I find that I have to abrade a lot. And I can start with either a 3/8 or 5/16 because it's pretty small. This is a typical size for little dart points. Right, so I've got a couple already made from previous videos. I got a couple of little dart points already made, and they still got a little bit of modeling clay from hafting demonstrations. Anyway, you can see that these are little dart point size, and that's what I'm shooting for with this one. Something like this, but I'll probably make a Texas point out of this Texas material. Yeah, and I'll demonstrate how to haft this when I'm done too. Okay, so this video may be kind of long, and I don't think my phone is overheating, and if it is, I'll crank up the fan, and we'll just have to live with the fan noise. All right. So it looks well ground to me anyway. The ends are thinned down, but I'm going to thin down the ends more before I thin the middle. You know, I might be tempted to get rid of this nasty area, this kind of like this hinge area and this spot here first, but no, I'm going to thin down the ends first to prevent snapping in half. I don't know how strong this is as a material. It might snap in half easy. It doesn't seem like it is, but it might. So I always prepare by thinning the ends down first. Heavy ends often lead to snap in half situations. If you got a lot of weight on the tip, a lot of weight on the base, if you have both, that's the worst case scenario. Sometimes I'll leave a lot of weight on the base and thin the tip way down. That helps, but it doesn't help as much as thinning both sides. Over time, you get used to knowing what helps to prevent disaster. But it comes with experience, because not all guys had the same problems. Okay, so it just depends on what you're having problems with. And some guys are napping a certain kind of stone most of the time, so they know what to do with their particular piece of stone. And they may just nap it so it's all the same thickness from tip to base without any problems at all. So it's not a hard and fast rule. There's no hard and fast rules in flint napping other than don't break it. Yeah. If you can leave it thick and not break it, it's worth it, even though it might not look good. I'd rather have something thick and not broken than two broken thin pieces, than two pieces from a broken thin piece. I do not like two thin pieces. I like one thin piece. So I'm just going down the edge. Let's go down the other edge. Just creep down into the middle. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This is when you know if it's going to be crunchy in the middle or not. Some stones are better and more cooperative when thinning than others, but you never know. Okay? You don't know for sure. I can say that this particular stuff thins well, but you might not be able to thin yours even though you have the same type of stone. Same color, same area that we gathered it from, same size, everything same, but yours might have a different consistency, and it would either nap better or worse than this. You know, it may nap with less step fractures, or it may nap with more step fractures, even though we are doing the same thing and we're at the same skill level. Okay, same tools, same everything. We may get different results just because the stone is different, and that happens a lot, actually. And it can happen in one little area of the stone that has a different consistency. And I've had guys tell me that they can't do it. They didn't make points from that stuff that I recommended because there was just weirdness, or they couldn't get through this one area of concrete. Everything else was wonderful. And on and on. There's all kinds of reasons why you're not successful other than lack of practice. And it's just my luck when I recommend something. I've had several instances where I was told, well, the recommendation didn't pan out. Yeah. But that's okay. That's part of the game. That's why I try not to recommend. But people, they will get around me not recommending stuff by just asking me what my favorite is. What's my favorite material? Maybe that will let them know what is good. But most new guys probably will mess up the stuff I think is my favorite, because it can be finicky. For instance, I like the black butter dacite. The black butter dacite obsidian, some people have a really hard time with it because it snaps in half easy, or it crushes on the edge easy, or it's hard to sharpen, etc., etc. And all that stuff is true, but I like it still. So just because I say it's my favorite doesn't mean that it's going to be good for beginners, let's say. Let's see. Yeah, it's starting to cool down a little bit in here. The sun has gone completely down, so we're good. Yeah, when it's really hot, it does affect the flint knapping, especially since it's been cold here recently. Trying to get used to the weather. If I'm not used to it, it does affect the flint knapping. Now see, some of these hits are very, very hard. But in order for me not to make a mistake, I've got to make sure I've got good convexity when I hit really, really hard, and good ground edges. And then thin on the ends. Three things: good convexity, so it's not flat. I'm not going to hit really hard into these areas, for example, but I am going to hit hard into these convex areas. I also need a really ground down edge so it doesn't crush when I hit hard, or it doesn't peel off a big old ring shaped crack. And there was one more thing in there, but I can't remember. Okay, so I'm hitting really, really hard to get these thinned down at this stage, these pieces that I make. And sometimes I'm right on the edge of breaking the whole thing, and I know it. I can feel it also if I start to sweat. The dreaded sweat stage. Like, see, these are hard hits. Big flakes require big hits. Yeah. You can't be shy about that. And it is risky, yes. These are hard hits compared to the ones I was just doing. Especially near the tip and the ends. The flakes that I took off the ends were not nearly as hard as these that I'm removing from the middle. I'm seeing this tip is still a little bit thick, so I'll go back and thin it some more. And yeah, it's risky. This is the hardest part of flint knapping because it's so risky. The thin piece. And I didn't show you what I started out with as far as the width to thickness ratio when I started this final thinning. Hopefully I can remember next time. That was a very hard hit. And see, I got a secondary flake. That's another consequence of hitting really, really hard. You know, and sometimes you'll get radial cracks. So instead of scooping fractures, you'll get a radial fracture going, you know, this way. The crack is vertical like this. And that can go across the piece and snap it in half if you got a lot of pull or stresses on it. So I call these scooping flakes. There's got to be another word for it, but I don't care. It describes it better. If these scooping side flakes are the ones we want. We don't want those radial cracks. Those radial cracks happen because of the shape of this tooltip and by the stresses of bending. I'm not going to get into the fracture mechanics because I don't know the physics all that well. And even if I did, I'd probably get it wrong. As far as why, if you do see a radial crack, I might not give you the correct explanation for that particular radial crack. You know, for example, there's slightly different reasons for different types of cracking, and I don't know exactly why. I just know that if it is cracking and messing up, it's probably because I didn't grind it enough. But I can't grind it too much because then I run the risk of doing those bites on the side that rip off too much of the side. If it's too strong, if the side's too strong, it rips off part of it as you strike. It's got to, the flake has to initiate. It's got to be just right. It can't be too weak on the edge or too strong on the edge. And after a while, you'll get in the zone and you'll know where that Goldilocks zone is. And the Goldilocks zone is different for these different stages. You know what I mean? What works in the stage before this might not work at this stage. Sometimes rocks change their behavior entirely as you thin them down. Yep. Okay. Okay, let's examine why would it break there. Too much force for one, and also there might have been too much mass on the end there causing too much bending. It does look a little thin, but that's, yeah, it might have scooped out too much also. And, you know, should have been more careful on the thinning. So now we go to the next rock. Yeah. It probably started as a radial crack. Yeah. A crack that goes this way because of the bending forces. I wasn't paying attention actually. Now that I'm looking at it, I should have thinned this down first before hitting that. So let's see. This is okay because it was a gift, but unfortunately, it's a bummer because now we can't weigh everything and get our results from this one. You know, the percentage yield didn't work on this one, so let's go to the next one. I'm still going to collect all the flakes. I can still measure it. Let's see. I'll still do the measurement. How's that? It just won't be the exact finished piece, but it'd be close. We got kind of close to how thin it's supposed to be. I'll measure the ratio on the thinness. If it's 6:1, then that's what I usually stop at anyway. And these types of videos are not for entertainment, so if you get upset about the breakage, that's fine. This is not intended to be entertaining. This is intended to be an instructional video. Okay? All right. So I will weigh this. My average is about 5% yield compared to the original stone. And yes, some of those flakes can be used, the ones that are debitage, they can be used as tools. So if you count everything, you know, the point and the tools that can be used, or the tools that can be made from those flakes, the yield is higher. But we're just going to go with this. Let's measure the ratio with the thickness ratio and all the other stuff. Okay, so let's just do this in millimeters. 45 millimeters by, what is that? Is that 5? 5 into 45, 9 to 1. It's much thinner than I normally am at this stage. That's probably why it snapped right there. So 9 to 1 is thinner than I usually do it. That's one reason why it snapped. Yeah, I usually end up with 6 to 1. Okay, so that was already thin enough. I didn't need to thin it anymore. So let's see what the total weight is. Add everything together. Yeah, and some points are finished at that stage with just a little bit of sharpening, and they can be attached to ladle dart foreshafts even though they don't have notches. You can still attach this to a foreshaft. And it'll work. Or a knife handle. Okay, it could be, you know, a finished point. So we're not too far off. Okay, so here we go. 1.73. £1, 7.3. 1 pound. Let's see. Why is it more now than it was before? I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, 7.4. Does it... Oh, gosh. Let's see. Maybe it's the cup that is different this time. Let me see. Let me figure this out, because I have more now than I did before. Let me make sure I... Yeah, 2.7 ounces. That's probably it. The cup. Yeah, we didn't eliminate the weight of the cup. All right, so let's see. I just want to make sure it's the same. That's better. 1.4, 1 pound, 4.6. So we lost a little bit. Okay. Now let's measure just the point. 1.2 ounces. This is all, and this is point. So let's, what is the percentage? So this is 20.6 ounces, 1.2 ounces. So it's 1.2 divided by 20.6. I do have a calculator, don't I? Oh yeah, on my phone. Let's see. I didn't bring my other phone, and I don't have a calculator. We'll estimate it. 5%. We're just going to estimate it at 5%. If it was 10%, it'd be 2 ounces. So it's like half of that. So yeah, we're at you know, pretty close, 5%. You can do the math and get exactly. I forgot that I needed a separate phone or a separate calculator. Yeah. Okay, so let's put this aside. Put this in the broken by faces. And I need this for my... Let's see. Yeah, we'll just do this. Sort that debitage later. I'm going to save some of those flakes. Put my tools back in. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing with the next. Let's see, which one should we use? This one is. Should we use the Fort Payne or Texas? I'm going to use the Texas again, since it's probably similar in consistency. I don't want to change it up too much, just so I can do it faster. I'm going to do this much faster, okay, to get caught up to where we were. with the other one. Yes? Yeah. Okay, let me see. What am I doing? What am I doing? Same two boppers. The 13 and the whatever that was. 8 ounce. Okay. Here we go. 55 minutes, so an hour has already gone by. But I'm going to be doing this a lot faster. Okay? Without explaining it. Oh, I know what I forgot. Measured this. 4 inches. It's pretty thick. It's like 2.25, 2.5 inches thick. It's like 4.25 at the largest distance. All right, and then we weigh this. What do we start with? Let's see. Yeah, it's zeroed out. So the next. Next attempt. 1 pound, 13.5 ounces. 1 pound, 13.5 ounces. Start. And it's 4.25 inches long. Okay. 1 pound, yeah. Okay, so. Keep that there. All right, let's go faster this time. And I'll probably be talking about other things. I might, I'll just describe the stone a little bit. But the less I think about this, the faster it goes. I can see some cracks already. I'm going to try to maximize it while, saving some of these, or generating some of these kinds of flakes. I like these bigger flakes because I can make little arrowheads out of those. That's not that good. The stone appears to be pretty good. I'm just not striking it in the right spot. There we go. So now I've got, that's the ideal situation where you can get 2 pieces like this. And then I'll nap one into a point. Yeah, and we'll try to get the same size as before. This was the previous. We should be able to get the same size, or pretty close. Whichever one can get us there. They're the same. Let's see, which one looks more consistent? Let me see. Which one has less potential for cracks? I think this one, because I already took some off of this side, looks pretty good, but this you never know. We can save it for later. Put it in the debitage bowl for later. Put it in the debitage bowl for now, and then we can use it later. Okay. So let's reduce this. Let's switch the bopper down to the next size. I don't need that big bopper anymore. Thin down the ends without losing too much materials. I am going to run into some issues with this lighter area is kind of dry compared to this area in the middle. And I'll try not to thin this down as much. That way, less chance of breakage. As long as we have 6:1 width to thickness ratio, we're good. If it seems like I can get it thinner, I'll try it, but I got to keep in mind that I'm a little bit tired from napping earlier. That affects the napping too. I did do some napping earlier today, so I'm not fully rested. I'm not fully awake, I guess. I don't know. I was watching a video earlier today about humming. You can reset your mind by humming. It tends to quiet the mind, and I don't know if that's why I tend to hum while I'm napping sometimes, to get in the zone a little bit. I thought that was interesting. I said, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you could kind of reset your brain just by humming for, I think he said 20 seconds. But he might have meant the slow, steady hum, like a meditative hum. I don't know. I didn't watch the whole video. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this point's going to be smaller than the other one. I can tell already. I'm not going to be the same size. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit smaller. Okay, that's all right. Come on. That's good. There it goes. I'm trying to maximize this, so I'm trying to be very careful. That was a nice flake. This area on this side is kind of cortexy. It's hard to initiate flakes from that kind of edge where it still has some cortex on it. It can lead to problems if you have to hit too hard. So I'm going to switch over to indirect percussion here. Yeah. This one feels a little more delicate as far as snap and halfish. I think this one's more snap and halfish than the other one, so I'm going to use indirect percussion to be more accurate, right? Now let's see. Yeah, I'm going to use indirect percussion. I instinctively don't want to hit it hard with the bopper. Okay, 3/8 inch rod, same as before. 5/16, same as before. I need to abrade a lot. So that cortexy type material isn't too bad. It's not going to be a problem. You know, I thought this might be a problem, but it looks like it naps pretty easily. If there's a little bit of crunchiness, that's alright. I can still sharpen it. Oh, we got one flakes that went into orbit over there, so it's going to throw off our weight. But that's okay. This is dangerous, so I got to be in the zone. I can't be talking too much. I don't know how snap and halfish this stuff is. The only way I know is if I do snap it in half. Yeah. I gotta assume that it's going to be more fragile than the other one, so I'm gonna try not to take too much risk. Try not to thin it down as much. If it does get thinner, it's just incidental. It's not, I'm not intending to get this really thin. But sometimes these flakes will scoop out a lot, and I have no choice but to live with the thinness. Some people say that's a good problem to have. Yeah, it can be, unless it's a hazard like the last time, because if it gets too thin in the middle, for example, without thinning the ends, I could snap it in half again, even if I keep it thick. Yeah. Keep it thick comparatively speaking. Because 6-to-1 is thick compared to 9-to-1. And big flakes require big hits, so these are big hits. Let me get the file and see if I can get these edges ground down a little bit faster, smooth, and make sure they're nice and smooth, and make sure I do it fast. Sometimes the file works pretty good. Depends on the stone. Sometimes the file works faster than the coarse abrader. And I'm just taking these flakes at random. If they end up being close together and look like parallel flaking, it's incidental and not necessarily intentional on my part. I don't try to do parallel flaking or long, narrow flakes. If that happens, it's incidental. I prefer my flakes to be big and wide like this one here, or some of these other bigger wide ones. I don't normally try for longer narrow flakes. It's just too much of a hassle to try to do that every time. For me, they're very unpredictable. And if I were to train myself to do those, it works for a while, but then if I don't do them on every point, I forget how to do them and it doesn't work all that well. Either I do that on every point or I don't. It messes up my napping if I have to switch back and forth. Because yeah, it's a different mindset to get these longer and more narrow flakes. It requires a different surface. Also requires a little bit of different feel, like These longer, more narrow flakes, a lot of times you need pressure ahead of the strike. Not always, but it helps. And then you got to follow these ridges more closely and not just hit into fat spots. You got to be more aware of where the ridges are. You can create ridges ahead of time by just following the previous ridge from the previous flake. But I don't tend to do that. I just look to see where the worst is, and nap the worst first. And if it happens to be right next to each other, that's just incidental. And I'm skipping around a lot. I'm seeing that I missed some spots. That could be thinner. But it's all leading to a 6-to-1 ratio. I'm pretty used to judging what's going to be a 6-to-1. And as long as it fits in the little dart foreshaft, we're good. Six to one usually works to fit nicely in the slot in the little dart foreshaft. Now this final thinning is the hardest part in all of flint knapping. I haven't gotten to the hardest part yet. I'm just now getting into it. Okay, this is the stage we broke it last time. So now I've got to make sure the end is thinned down and they don't go as thin as before. Make sure the base and the tip are thinned. The base is less important than the tip. A couple of reasons. One, some artifacts have thick bases, so it's not a bad idea to get used to making thick bases. And number two, for some reason, a thick base doesn't lead to snap and halfish as much as both the thick tip and thick base. Anyways, I don't know. Very hard hit. Very hard hit. This is what broke it last time. I think we're good as far as thickness goes. It's not too thin. Just taking little flakes there and then a big flake over here. I think we should be about the right thinness. Almost there. Yes. Let's check the foreshaft. I'm going to use this one. Need to go a little bit thinner. Yeah. That's okay. I think I can manage it. We'll thin this from the base and the sides. I think it's just one little area that's messing us up as far as being too thick. Yeah, it's just this part right here. So if I send a couple flakes in there, good ones, should be all right. Shouldn't need too much force. I support the flake? Kind of, yes. But I did more of the supporting of the whole blade than just that flake. I didn't really support just the flake. I supported everything. So if you ask me, did you support that flake? I would say yes, because I was supporting everything, actually. I don't want it to snap in half, so yeah, it'll fit. Now let's see, does it fit straight? If it doesn't fit straight, I gotta thin it a little bit more so we can have room to maneuver. It's a little bit, well, I don't know. Yeah, it's a little bit this way. The tip is a little bit that way, so just a little bit more thinning, and we should be able to maneuver it to get it straight into the slot. So moving the edge that way so I can take flakes off the other side. And yeah, I'm supporting everything, but I'm not gripping it really hard. I'm just making sure that there is contact all the way around a little bit. And let's see. Yes. A little bit more. I can take a couple side flakes, so I don't have to mess with the base. And I think back in the day they used to make foreshafts ahead of time and use them as gauges for how thin these things need to be. Come on. Don't make me hit it really, really hard, because that's what causes the breakage. So I'm going to move the edge. I'm taking off material here for symmetry, but also to move the edge that way. So making it more narrow for symmetry and for thinning. Getting closer to that. There's a thick spot here that prevents us from adjusting this in the slot. There's got to be a little bit of wobble in there to adjust it to keep it straight. But actually, yeah, right now it's too firm. But that might be straight enough. I might just, yeah, I don't need to take off big flakes. Looks pretty straight. I'll just take off just enough to, you know, go to the middle. That's it. I don't need to go past the middle. I think I can manage it. Yeah, like that. It's just a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to clean up the debitage here in a minute. All right, so yeah, we'll need to work on some symmetry and then put notches in and then sharpen it. And then we haft it. Yeah, like that. Took a chance on it. Took a chance on a big flake because I like these bold flakes. I'm still using a 3/8 inch diameter. I haven't even switched to the smaller. I might switch to the smaller one if I can see a good flake to remove later on when we're sharpening it. Sometimes there's a thick spot that's better removed with the indirect percussion flaker. Yeah, and it's sometimes better to use the smaller flaker, even though this one's working okay, because sometimes it just works better. I don't know. And when I say work better, I don't have to hit as hard. Yeah, when you focus the force with a smaller flaker, sometimes you don't need to hit as hard to get similar flakes. This one has a bigger surface area that needs to make contact, right? Or that makes contact. Doesn't need to, but this bigger flaker has more surface area, and it covers more surface area on the edge. So it pulls more. And sometimes a smaller flaker doesn't pull as much, and it doesn't require as much force to make the same or similar flakes. Okay? All right. But it worked out. Yeah. So, are we there yet? Almost. Almost ready for notching. It helps to get this area thinned down in the corners or whatnot, because you don't want to do this after you put the notches in, because these are going to probably be barbs. If I make a Marcos or something out of this, which I probably will, thinning these barbs down later is risky. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to use a pressure flaker to go around the whole thing. Make the edges less wonky. I'm still thinning a little bit. I'm going to do the ratio with the thickness ratio, see what we have. And collect all my flakes. We're moving into a different stage, so I'm going to clean up. Gives me a reason to clean up a little bit. Yeah, right. What's the ratio? This one is, let's just do, is it 45? Yeah, we got a 45 distance there, 45 millimeters there. Take the, it's still 9:1. It's 5 millimeter by 45. So we got the same as before, but it's down here where it's thinner. Let's try the width, the thickness up here. 30, let's go with 36. Maybe it's 6 in the middle. It's 5, so it's 7:1 in here. 7:1 there and 9:1 down here. So thinner than I thought. Okay? Yep, it does happen. Alright, so let's get all these flakes collected. Do a preliminary weigh-in, I guess. No, we'll just collect the flakes and we'll do the weight later after we get the notches and the sharpening done. Yeah. How much does the foreshaft weigh? That's a good question. We'll add those all together too, with the modeling clay for glue, the sinew, and the foreshaft, and everything together. We'll weigh everything at the end also. Because the point itself is not the final weight of the tip of the atlatl dart. The tip of the atlatl dart also includes the foreshaft, the glue, and the sinew. And yeah, the sinew does weigh something, especially if you use a lot of it. Probably doesn't matter too much in the overall scheme of things. But it does make a slight difference. It makes more difference with arrows than it does with atlatl darts. All right. Especially at longer ranges. If you got a lot of sinew on one arrow and not on another one, it could throw off your distance shooting. You could be off a couple inches, and that's all it takes to miss the heart if you're shooting at a deer. Okay, so let's see. We're not going to weigh this yet. Let's do the pressure flaking. This next stage is a different mindset, this pressure flaking. Yes, yeah. I got more flakers now, so I bought some more pressure flakers, modern style. I need this. There we go. So what I got here, I'm going to use these three. A little bit dull tip, a finer point, and then a notcher. Okay. So we're going to do the notching first. No, we're going to do the pressure flaking all the way around first with this medium tip. I could do the notching first without doing this, but I want to take a pass around it first and then grind it again. Okay? All right. 1 hour, 25 minutes. So it only took 25 minutes to get to this stage when it took an hour earlier. I was explaining a lot more earlier. This has got some translucency. Yeah. The other one, let's see. Not as much. This one has more. And these are both raw stones as far as I know. I mean, one might have been heat damaged or heat treated. So you can zoom in on this view when this type of video, you can zoom in and see what I'm doing. It's easier for me to be further away from the camera and keep it in frame. You know, you can touch the screen with your fingers and do this and it'll zoom it in. Hopefully you'll see what I'm doing. I'm just hitting or pressing against the thick spots. Trying not to cause step fractures, but I usually get one anyway. Can't seem to avoid them. And the more I try, the worse it gets. The more I try to avoid them, the worse it gets. I gotta change something about my strategy. Still learning how to do the tips. After many, many years, I still don't have a good grasp on doing the tips without at least a little step fracture somewhere. It takes me forever to get those out. I can damage control them, but the problem is I should be able to not do them in the first place. I am exerting inward pressure so I can get these flakes to travel to thin that down. But the way I recommend this pressure flaking to new guys is just downward pressure near the tip. Like those two, the last two. Just downward pressure. The rounded tip gives you a slight inward force. You use more inward force as you go down. So here you can use a lot of inward force. It helps to push those flakes a little further. You don't have to, but it just looks a little more proportional with longer flakes down here. It has that proportional appeal to it, where if the flakes are longer down here where it's wider, it just looks better, and then they get smaller as you go up. Just proportional. It looks proportional, which I guess in my view, in my opinion, it looks better. Except if you put a big metal mark in there by trying to push inward. And yeah, it should be right over the slot, but sometimes I forget. Or I can't be bothered to make sure it's in the right position. Anyways. I can be more persnickety about this later. Yeah. I'm going to do some heavy pressure on this side. Let's see, should I do percussion? I'm going to try pressure first. If the pressure flakes are big enough to get some of that thickness off. I'll just stick with pressure. Because I like it to be nicely tapered all the way down. I don't like to have that roundedness here on this side where it's flat on this side. It's going to make it thinner, yes, and more hazardous to nap on, but at least it'll look more tapered. I am using inward pressure on this just because I'm trying to thin. I should probably make sure there's no rock dust in the tip of this. It does affect the napping if there's rock dust in the tip. It makes it more slippery if there's rock dust. I know some people say no, the dust and powder on the edges or whatever, it makes it grip. I don't think it makes it grip. See, I feel like it's gripping more right now than it was earlier. So is it thinning it? Kind of, sort of. But it's getting to the point where I can probably do a better job thinning the rest of this with indirect percussion. Yeah. But not long flakes, just, flakes that almost go to the center. I just want to get rid of this fat spot. Get rid of this fat spot. It's tapered enough. Just that one fat spot. So I go down to the 5/16 inch diameter, the smaller diameter. Yeah, let's see if this can remove one or two flakes to get rid of that thick spot. Yeah, okay. That would have taken a lot of pressure. Yeah. I don't want to wear myself out with these big old pressure flakes. To get the same result with pressure would require a lot of force, pressure force. But with indirect percussion, it's just a tap. Much less force, much less effort. Not much less force. Much less effort on my part, same amount of force. Yeah, that would take a lot of pressure. A lot. Yes? Better? I think it's better. Are we there yet for the notching? Not yet. I'm just going to trim this so it's not so jaggedy and so I can check to see if there's cracks and stuff. If there's cracks on the edge, I don't think it's good to ignore them. All right, so let's see. Same thing on this side. Let's get rid of those jaggedy edges. It still needs one pass of sharpening flakes. At least maybe 2 passes on each edge. All right, so corner notches. Marcos has corner notches. A very wide stem. Yeah. The hardest part is done. I'm going to try to get these notches done quickly. Let me straighten this basal edge first. The Marcos was very persnickety. Yeah, the nappers were very persnickety about these. Okay, let's see. No, no, no. I'm trying to push off a good flake. Yeah, like that. Why didn't it work before? Because I was afraid to apply too much pressure, but it's forcing me to apply a lot of pressure. And luckily, I'm not blowing away much of the edge. Sometimes we get ring cracks from pressure flaking too much, or with too much force. Okay. All right, good. It didn't ruin the edge. Sometimes it takes off too much of the edge when you use a lot of force. All right. So that's straight enough. Let's see if this is ready. It has to be thin with no burr. Okay, here we go. The important thing is a wide stem on these. Try to make the stem as wide as possible. Maybe I should use a steel. I have a steel notcher also. The copper seems to be bending too easily. It's developing a burr a little bit too easy, and it's denting and getting pitted too easily. Let's see how the steel does it. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. The notches on these don't need to be narrow. The important thing is the wide stem. As long as the stem is wide, the notch width doesn't matter too much. If you look at the artifacts, I have a book. I'll try to copy one from the book. See how deep the notches go. I'm gonna go as far as I can until I feel like it's too risky. And I thinned this down ahead of time. I think it was yesterday I reground all my tools. And then I cleaned up my shop today, or cleaned it out. There's still flakes everywhere. But I moved a lot of rocks that I'm not using out of the shop. I'm going to expand this notch a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so before I go too much further on this side, I'm going to do the other side. I remember there was more room here on the other side, so I'm going to back that off a little bit before I start notching. The object is to get nice clean snaps followed by scraping. Scraping strengthens the edge for the next flake. Using a combination of pushing down with the corner of the flaker and pushing with the middle into the bottom of the notch. Okay, so two different ways of using this notching tool. Yeah, pushing with the middle of the notcher, and then using the corner of the notcher to push down to trim it, and to remove the delicate edge for the next flake. Theoretically, oh, this one is thicker than the other side. So I'm pushing downward to get little bitty flakes, and then a big flake requires that I use the middle of the notcher, or approximate middle, like that. But it still didn't go. I just took out that thick flake, but it's supposed to be a big old pop out. It didn't do it. Let's see. Slippery. Yeah, it has a burr. I can feel that when and yeah, I'm supposed to go in one direction, I know, but I'm going to get a new file anyway. And then I'm going to file the top couple, no, inch and a half I use to take that off, so it'll fit in my toolkit. It's just a cheap file anyway. Let's see. So this side is very thick. I forgot to thin it down or something. I'm tempted to take some more flakes off so I can get to that. See, it's starting to stall. I don't want to use the file, so maybe I should just take a flake off to thin it. Yeah, that's very thick right here. See that? right where I'm supposed to be notching. See if I can remove a flake without taking too much off the edge. Thin down ahead of that notch. Yeah, like that. One more. Yeah, like that. Probably going to have to use the file anyway. It's very thick still, but it's all right. Let's see. So it's just a matter of picking at it, maybe. Maybe if I pick at that, there's a little bit of a step fracture in there. I might be able to pick that out. Almost. Yeah. So I pushed on the step fracture and picked out some of it. It thins down the bottom, so maybe I can continue to press off some flakes. It's starting to stall, so we'll see how it goes. I should have noticed that earlier, that it was really thick, and remove some more thinning flakes ahead of time. Yeah, there we go. I used the middle to push, and it was sharper, so it grabbed the edge and took off a big flake. Let's try another one. Yeah, like that. It's a little bit crunchy in the middle, but it's all right. That was a good flake. Yep, so now it's thin enough so I can continue. And if it wasn't for me taking some thinning flakes, that probably wouldn't have traveled like that. So, combination of sharpening the tool tip and then removing some flakes ahead of the notch worked pretty good. The combination of those two things. Yeah, like that. Yes. For some reason, we're off on our symmetry. Not for some reason. I mean, we're off. It's pretty typical to be off symmetry at this stage. I don't know why I said for some reason. Yes. Yeah, we'll sharpen it in a minute. Sharpening can also be used to contour the edge a little bit. Yeah. Is that deep enough for the notches? Let's look in the book. Probably not deep enough. I'll have to risk it. Alright, so Marcos, right? It's this book, by the way. Stone Artifacts of Texas Indians. Alright, so Martindale. Marcos is the one before that. Right there. So I could actually make the notches a lot wider. But yeah, they need to go deeper. So what I can do on mine, I can take some off of this, off the base. It doesn't need to be this wide. See that? My base is really wide. I can borrow some off the base. if I want to. Yeah. See, these expand slightly. Do they all do that? Some of them do not. But the neck is more narrow than mine, so I need to deepen those notches. And it makes sense. You don't want a lot of space between the notching and the wood. You want that space across the neck to be close to the wood. Yeah, unless I get a bigger foreshaft, a wider foreshaft. That's it. I don't know where my wider foreshafts went to. Yeah, that's it. These might be a slightly wider, but not much. Okay, so never mind. Were they knives? I mean, the Marcos could be a knife too. Yeah. And then we're done. If it's a knife, we're done. They look like they could be both, right? Projectile points or knives. How about if I do a knife? There's plenty of room. Yeah. And the stem matches pretty close, so it'll be a firm grip on the stem there. Yeah. If we call it a knife, we call it good. Did I break the tip off? Just a little bit? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Go deeper with the notches so you can see? I suppose. It's risky. Let's see. We can do both. Go make a knife and go deeper with the notches. Well, let me see. If I go deeper with the notches, it will. Yeah. Well, I can go a little bit. Yeah. Seems a little small for a knife. Maybe. Yeah, I just crunched the bottom of the notches to make them a little bit deeper, but they don't need to be deeper. Not for the knife, but for that little dart foreshaft maybe, yes. Is it symmetrical? I don't know. I think it's good. I don't want to spend too much time. It's getting late. I don't have much. I got a lot of stuff to do to finish up for the auction. Yeah. So I'm going to call it good right there. Okay? No sense in risking blowing out one of those barbs. All right, so let's sharpen it. What's the proper way to sharpen? There are many different ways, so there's no one proper way. I can show you the easiest way. Just do a little bevel. One pass on one side and the same on the other side. But in this case, there's more mass on this side, so I can sharpen it with a bevel this way and then sharpen it with a bevel in that way toward the more mass. That way it'll thin it down a little bit. Why is thinner better? Thinner cuts better, especially if it's going to be a knife. Yeah. The little dart points can be thicker, yes. But the knives, it's better to be thin. Alright, so here we go. We're just going to do a pass. try to do these flakes close together so that they overlap slightly. And if there's still a little spot in between that's dull, you can just pick that off with downward pressure. I tend to like to follow ridges when I'm doing this, but it's not absolutely necessary, because we're not doing the fancy flaking. Oops. Nice. That's a beautiful step fracture. Yeah. Luckily it wasn't very deep. That step fracture was not a big deal, so we were able to direct attack on that. Do a direct attack on it. So I'm just going to do a pass down one side and then space these flakes out a little bit and then go back and pick off the dull spots by doing it like this with a little more narrow tip. Yeah. Just pick the whole edge and then I'll get the dull spots automatically. How about that? Yes? Needs to be very pointy. Still got too much mass on this side. So we ran a pass down this side. Yeah. You can tell it's fresh. All right, so sometimes I get mixed up on where I'm at, but I can tell. All right. I'm going to thin down this tip very carefully. Yeah, like that. Nope. Yeah. Little snap flakes. No crushing. And yeah, we can get really persnickety with the tip if I want to. I just normally don't. I mean, I normally don't use a pressure flaker that sharp, but I might as well. Why don't I? Because they have to be resharpened every few minutes, or maybe even every minute. If you don't keep them sharp, they lose their consistency, and you start getting different flakes, and you're going, "What's happening? Oh, it's getting dull already." You get used to it being really, really sharp, and when it starts getting dull, you mess up. Come on. See, like that. It's already starting to get a little bit dull, and it won't take that flake that I'm used to taking. Come on. So why don't I sharpen it? See, I didn't need to. Why didn't I sharpen the flaker? Just going to make do with what I got. Okay, so what side was I pressure flaking earlier? This side? Yeah, okay. So let's clean this up by just downward flakes, removing dull spots. I can kind of see them at this angle. And just downward pressure to straighten this edge and remove dull spots in between the flakes I removed earlier. And it does leave a little bit of a serrated edge, but that's incidental, not intentional. I'm just trying to get these flakes close together. But if I push on the edge too much, it dulls it. I mean, if I get these downward flakes too close together, it'd be almost like scratching the edge and it gets dull. I'll need to do one more pass on some of this area that's thick on the other side. So even though it's sharp edge, I can still remove flakes when it's thick. Yeah, it's been sharpened, but if it's thick, I can still push off a flake and hopefully not get too many of those. Yeah, like that. No. And I'm pushing on the surface. I'm not trying to grip the edge. See what I'm saying? I'm putting, sometimes I put the flaker right on the edge, but sometimes I'm up on the surface. So it's either right there or right there. It's a very subtle difference. I'm going to put this right on the edge. Yeah, it didn't work. So up a little farther. Didn't work. If it doesn't work, it's all right. Skip it, move on. And yeah, it might be a little crushed right there, make a mistake, but at least it's not crushed along the whole edge. Okay, we're just gonna do what I normally do, just make doo-doo with what I got. So now I'm gonna do a pass down this side. I guess it doesn't matter which side. I probably should have started on the other side. There's a little bit of a constriction on this side. To make it symmetrical, I got to remove more from this side. But that's also crushed in there, so let me see. Maybe I can remove some of that crushing. Yeah. I'm going to grind this, take some flakes off, like I was supposed to do in the beginning, because this side is fatter than this side, or it's more rounded, I should say. I should be pushing flakes into this side, and we'll come back and we'll grind this and push more flakes this way. That way we get some symmetry. Yeah, even though this is nice and sharp, it's not symmetrical, so now it's not nice and sharp. But we're doing it for symmetry. Symmetry is a good cause. Yeah. It was nice and sharp, but now it's not. For a good cause. All right, all right. I'm getting tired, so we're going to wrap this up soon. Yeah, like that. And this is not exceedingly heavy pressure, but it's not gentle either. Some of these are gentle flakes. Yeah. I probably should have done some indirect percussion to thin that down, but oh well. I'm taking too long. I'm getting on my own nerves. Lowering it like that. See, it's starting to get too thin. I take bites out. So this edge is starting to get on my nerves. It's very crushy, and I'm trying to get rid of the crushing marks, and then it's not working. So I'm just going to leave it. Yeah. I think it's because I'm thinking about this too much. I am going to use indirect percussion. Pressure flaking is not my forte. It's not working like I want it. Okay. I want to get rid of that fatness on this side. Okay, see that? It's too fat on this side. I've been trying to do that the whole time with pressure, but they don't dig in. They're just skimming over the top. I need some flakes that'll dig in. And if I do heavy pressure flaking to dig them in, I get this. See that little ring crack? I don't get that as much with the indirect percussion. Why? I don't know. That's not good. Step fracture. It's not one thing, it's another. This is the hardest part when I'm trying to thin a thin piece. Going back to that stage. Trying to thin down a thin piece. Yeah, like that. See, I can't get that with pressure flaking. Yeah, like that. Those dig in nicely. Yeah, the percussion flakes, they remove the fat spots. Yeah, that's what I like. Okay. Running at a little bit of an angle here because it's not quite below center line, it's right at center line, so and make sure I got a little bit of an angle there. You might say, what was that? Just a little tweak. That's all that was, just a little tweak. That's not good. It's already starting. That's because I'm tired. There's no excuse for that other than that's me. Dang it. Trying to scoop it out and it didn't work. Am I going to fix that? I might not be able to fix that. Yeah, probably not. I'll just have to pick at it and minimize it. least the edge is sharp. Dang it. Yeah, that's not good. Oh well. They just reduced the price of this by a lot. But you know what? I got other points. Alright, so here we go. We're just going to finish up. Sometimes if I can remove this edge to create symmetry, I can remove those little step fractures. But in this case, oh come on. Yeah, it's getting very steppy at this stage. Dang it, look at that. Alright. Yeah. I'm trying to sharpen it. I'm trying to sharpen you. It's not cooperating. Let's see. Oh, I know what. My other glasses might help. I keep forgetting I need a higher magnification when I'm working the tips. It's already been 2 hours and 12 minutes. Who's counting? Yeah, I'm counting. Nope, not that one. Nope, not that one. See, I can't see long distance with these, but I can see up close. Oh, yes. I might have been able to avoid the step fractures right there if I had put my glasses on. This is not the hardest part of Flintknapping. This is just the most tedious. The hardest part is getting it thin without breaking it. This is just tedious. It's not difficult. It's just... You might think it might be difficult not to do that. It's actually not too difficult to not do that. That's my fault. I just wasn't paying attention enough. Yeah. Anyways. Okay. And this is not for entertainment. This is for instruction purposes. Yeah. The reason why I got mistakes along the edge on this one is because I wasn't paying attention, and also my glasses, they help a lot when I put on the higher magnification. And I didn't have the higher magnification earlier, so that's on me. Now I can see thick spots on the edge. I can see the convexity. It's also makes a difference if I cannot see the convexity and I end up pressure flaking into a concavity. That also causes those step fractures. So that could have been it too. A slight concavity right there that caused those step fractures. It might have done it, but it looks convex. There probably was a little bit of concavity, and then I ended up, instead of stopping just at this one, I ended up doing more right next to it, and they tend to congregate together. Once you get one step fracture, it tends to create more step fractures if you're really close together. Yeah, sometimes it won't do that. When you're lucky, it's almost like attacking the step fracture from the flank. But in this case, it didn't do it. It just continued. Continued to get worse. Anyway, I'm just going back and looking at the edge and making sure I pick off the dull spots. I guess I am kind of making sure that there's little teeth, if they're just little bitty. But I'm not trying to make them any specific size on the serrations. I'm just trying to get them real close together without getting them too close together. If they're too close together, it makes it duller. Okay, so that's it. We're gonna haft it now. Okay. All right, where's my student? Yeah, I'm gonna take a big old piece here. Right. Let's try to get the longest piece. Wait a second, did I weigh this? Before we do this, let me collect all the flakes and weigh this. Because we're done with the point. Let's do the weight comparison. Okay? Yeah, before we do this. Where's the rest of it? Let's see. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do. The knife or the foreshaft? Probably the foreshaft, yeah. Okay. Let's make sure we get all the flakes. It doesn't make too much difference. They're just little bitty flakes. I don't want to drop these on the floor with the other flakes, so I got to be very careful. Yeah, it's not very many. Okay. Yeah, one thing I did not do earlier is I did not vacuum. I need to vacuum everything. All right. Let's weigh this, shall we? Now, I think we ran into a problem earlier, right? Because of the weight of the bowl. If this scale turns off, we have to make sure we calibrate it so that the weight of the bowl is taken into account. Yeah, okay, so we tare, make sure the weight of the bowl is taken into account. Now we put everything back in the bowl. Everything together. The bowl is 2.1 ounces. All right, so we have, just to double check, it should be the same as before with very little variation. 1 pound, 13.1 ounces. So 1 pound, 13.1 ounce. See, there is a slight difference because some of those flakes went into orbit. And then this is now, how long is it? 3 3/16. So we lost more than an inch. So, and then the point itself weighs. Gotta put it back in the bowl. And we can tear this. And don't have to put it back in the bowl. All right, so 0.7 ounces. Okay. So 0.7 divided by 13.1. If it was 10%, it'd be 13 ounces, so it's probably about 5%. Because, you know, it's half of that. Let's see. Yeah, 10% of that would be 13 ounces. So it's a little bit more than 5%. But you can do the math, okay? A little bit better yield than last time, I think. Yes or no? See, last time 20.6 ounces and 1.7. And then this one, yeah. Okay. Whatever. If I don't have the math right by doing it in my head, it wouldn't surprise me. Okay. Yeah. So, let's haft it. And no, I did not I did not fill it with water. Should have done that. As we were weighing it, it would have saved some time. Let's see where. I have to hide my water way in the back so I don't spill it. If it's anywhere near my work area, I spill that in about 5 minutes. I have an excellent ability to spill the water. I used to bring coffee into my shop too, and I'll spill either the water or the coffee in 5 minutes. And when I had coffee at work, I make sure I do not put my coffee anywhere near where I'm working. I had to walk over to where my coffee pot is, because I used to have a coffee pot, permanent coffee pot set up for myself, but not next to where I'm sitting. I have to walk over there out of reach because I will spill everything. Yes. And then when I'm in the car, I better drink that coffee fast because I will spill it in the car as well. It's because I'm a spaz. Ready? Where are we? we need to soften up some glue. What do I do with my foreshafts? Soften up some modeling clay. Here they are. We're going to put it on here. Yeah. The neck is still a little bit wide for this foreshaft, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And pretend it's a foreshafted. I pretend it's an at-level dart point. Okay. Yeah. Little blobs from the past. Well, these are already softened. It's warm enough in the shop that these are already soft. And I'm using modeling clay to simulate. This is not what I normally use for hafting these. Okay, this is just to simulate. Yes, is it straight? Okay. And yeah, the hot melt will normally be applied hot, and if you touch it with your fingers, you got to make sure you put water on your fingers, or it'll be very, very sticky and very, very hot. But this, with the modeling clay, it makes it easy to demonstrate, and then I can easily remove the modeling clay from the workpiece, so I can offer it in the auction. A little bit too much. Yeah. This easily washes off, so I'm not worried about it. I can scrape it off first, or just kind of rub it off, and then I can wash it off. Hot soapy water removes the modeling clay easily. And again, if you're just joining us, this is not how I normally attach these. This is just for demonstration. I was thinking of setting up my rosin with a little warmer, a little plate warmer, or whatever it is, whatever they call it. There's a little, you can plug in something that can warm up whatever you're needing to warm up. I think it's normally used for hot candle wax, scented candle wax. I have a couple of warmers for hot candle wax left over from when I was married. I would never use that for a candle wax, but they work great to heat up pine pitch and other rosin. Anyway, so that's just the way it looks with the glue. You got to get a good, nice, smooth transition between the wood and the stone. Everywhere. Make sure there's no gaps between, you look and imagine there's no gaps between the sinew and the glue. You don't want, when you wrap it, you don't want gaps between the glue and the sinew. You don't want any gaps between the stone and the wood. The glue is mainly a gap filler, and it firms up everything. But the sinew also shrinks and firms up the joint as well. Okay, so that's a nice smooth transition. Now we wrap it with sinew. And yeah, you can add glue to the sinew. I normally add that non-toxic school glue that's made from, what do you call it? Plant starch. or hide glue. I use that plant starch glue quite a bit. But hide glue can be used also. I think it's probably more authentic to use hide glue on the sinew. Or you can actually make glue from sinew. Alright, so here we go. The first wraps. And then once that's filled up, go down once around at least before you go back up. And then go back down. No. Let's do this again. Let's go up on this side. Yeah, like that. And then down. Go at least once around. I'm going to put another piece of sinew here. Nice and thick. Because this is a large point. This particular batch of sinew had some fat and membrane on it. So that's what you see me scratching off the excess fat and membrane. Okay. So let's get this. You overlap it once and then, let's see, up on the ears, go at least once around before you go back up. If it needs it. Yeah, I think it needs it. Yeah, and then back down. And this has got score marks in the wood. That's so the glue sticks better. If you use glue with the sinew, which you should, yeah. The sinew does stick to itself, as you can see, but it holds a lot better with glue, and then you can put rosin or some kind of waterproof stuff over the top of the sinew if you're worried about it getting loosened up by water. Okay, so that's the way it looks. And if you don't want as much of this over the top of the sinew as there is now, you can cut the wood shorter and just wrap up. A lot of artifacts you see have the sinew wrapped up over the top of the wood instead of leaving this big old batch of glue and wood up above the sinew. You can cut the notch more shallow and then wrap the sinew up over the top of the wood and not leave any glue exposed. I've seen that before. And then we check to see if there's no gaps between the stone and sinew. As the sinew dries, it pushes out the glue, so it minimizes the gaps. So I can put more in there. Anyways, yeah. If I was doing this for myself, I would make sure there's no gaps. I would put more glue in there. Where is the glue? Instead of telling you this, I'm just going to do it. Just fill all the gaps. You don't want any gaps. I call that flying sinew when it's out in the air. I don't want any gaps. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. No gaps between the sinew and the stone. We don't want flying sinew. I call it flying sinew. I don't know what else to call it. Okay? All the gaps are filled. There's plenty of wrap. Nice smooth transitions. That's it. Now we'll weigh this. Total weight of the point is not only the stone, but it's the sinew, the glue, and the foreshaft. And the point together. Everything together. .3 ounces. I have my grain scale too, so I'm going to do the grains. Let's see. Where's the pen? So 1.3 ounces. Total, that's 4 shaft plus sinew plus glue plus point. So it's almost double. Okay, and then we'll do grains so we know what grains, what the value in grains is. It is set to grains, okay. 585.7. 585.7 grains total. Okay. Alrighty. We didn't weigh this separately in grains, but I'm going to weigh it separately in the auction. Okay. I would need to take that completely apart right now, and I don't want to do it. Okay. That's it. We're done. Okay, there you go.